action. Hello, everybody. How you doing today? It's a new day. It's a fresh day. I hope you're hop shaking and baking. I always say that all my guests on the Paul Fo podcast are amazing people. They are stellar at what they do. And this gentleman I'm interviewing right now is no exception. His name is Mr. Dain Walker. He's the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Rival. I think it's one of the biggest or fastest growing. I call it the communication. Some people can call it brand because really you communicate. It's one of the fastest growing communication companies in Australia. Mr. Dain Walker, welcome to the Paul Fo podcast. How's it going, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks so much for having me, dude. Excited.
Yes. So I told my community that this guy is the god of branding. He's obsessed with the subject matter. So I want to start my this conversation with a question, but I want to start with a eureka moment that you had. You went to a conference in your country in Australia, and there were other speakers there. There were people that were speaking before Gary Vaynerchuk. A lot of people were coming. It's like a sales fest. Everybody was selling their products, and Gary got on the podium, picked up the microphone. He said, I'm not here to sell you anything. First of all, he framed the conversation. First, boom. He spoke for 10 minutes and he did the Q&A for 2 hours. You were walking home and you couldn't sleep properly that night. You were saying to yourself, this game has changed. Something has happened. And from that moment, it started your journey of creating. I want you to talk to us about that experience and what that has done for you, because that actually bettered what you are doing today.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think I always had this idea in my head that speakers had this certain, approach to how to do a keynote. And, I'd been in and out of the keynote scene, the personal development scene. I've read all the books and done the seminars. And I actually went to the seminar expecting to buy something.
Mm,
I just had been pre-programmed that that's what you do at these events. You go
mm,
along, they lead you on a little bit, and then they sell you something.
mhm,
And the main reason I went was because Gary was going. I was a giant fan of Gary. There's some other speakers there, and they're great speakers. Don't get me wrong. But what I felt in that room was, I was very broke at the time. I had a job, and I was frustrated, and I was very between worlds. And Grant Cardone had this bit about how he had a boot camp about how to build a business, and I was like, that
mhm,
sounds exciting. Like maybe I'll do that. And then I remember running up to the table and I said to the girl there, I was like, I don't have the money to put the cash down. I'm not a business owner, but I'd love to do the boot camp.
mm.
And do you have payment plans? And she kind of looked at me like, yeah, we have payment plans. Kind of like you can't afford Grant.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's $2,000 a fortnight for like, 8 payments or something like that. And I just remember in that moment just feeling very defeated and small and like
Mm,
insignificant. And I
mm,
remember I sat through the rest of the event, and I didn't realize this till later, but my partner was there that day, and she watched this whole thing go down. She watched me get excited. She watched me run
mhm,
up to the table, and then just realized the hope kind of left my body at the
mm,
moment where I realized I couldn't afford it. So I sat there quite frustrated through the rest of the event, and speaker after speaker got up and was selling their programs. And I was just like, this sucks, man. There's not really an option for someone that's broke. And then Gary comes out and he says, I'm not here to sell you shit. Did his story for 10 minutes and then did Q&A. But the epiphany I had was like, holy shit, he won the whole room and he wasn't selling anything. And I was like,
mm.
what's the power dynamic? What's the power dynamic of like giving it away for free, not having a pitch? Is you win the crowd.
That's right.
So I remember driving home and I was just like, that's fascinating. Like he gave it all away for free and
Mhm,
didn't ask for anything. But at the same time, not one person in that room would not have signed up had he sold something. So I was like, why did he resist selling
mm,
something? I
mm.
realized later on it's because he's the lightning rod for VaynerMedia, and he's the attention getter. He's the one that brings in all of the leads.
Yeah.
So I remember when I started my agency, I was like, I'm going to give away everything I know for free. I knew about sales. I knew about business. I knew about psychology. I knew about branding and design. I was like, I'm just going to teach it for free. And I just kind of stole his business model. But what happened was, because I was giving it away for free, I was getting leads from it. And I was like, oh, really? Like,
Mm,
the magic in this is like not trying to monetize immediately. It's just like, can I be valuable? Can I give it for free? And
mm,
the other thing that helped me in that time was Seth Godin, incredible at marketing. had someone ask him like, "Hey Seth, if nobody knew who you were, and let's just say you had the experience you had, but you didn't have any of the credibility, like you were just a complete nobody, what would you
Mhm.
do?" And he said, "I'd make content for 6 months, solve a problem very effectively for free, and then after 6 months, I'd commoditize it and find a way to sell it." And
Mm.
that's when it hit me. I was like, you have to give away your genius for free,
Mhm.
become a known name, and then
Mhm.
once you identified what it is people want from you, sell that.
Mm. 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 That's a very, very fascinating model. And I don't know what you think about it. I think Alex Omozi has put that model on steroids right now. It has
Yeah,
scaled that
yeah, he broke the
models.
internet. He's
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Alex is just, there was a point in his online thing where he's like, Alex is like, I'm going to give you this and this and this, like
Yeah.
stacking his value.
Yeah. Stacking the
And
value.
then
Yeah.
everyone in the comment section was going nuts because like everyone was like, here he goes, here's the pitch. Like we thought it
Yeah.
was free, it's actually not. He's going to try and sell you something. And then he's like, usually it's worth this. So he anchors
Mhm.
the price.
Yeah.
And then he says, it's all for free. You're
Yeah.
welcome. And just
Yeah.
gave away all of his content. But like, if you think about the genius, it's like he's giving it away to
Yeah.
get your attention,
That's right.
right? Then he's
That's right.
gonna later on, with that attention, he's gonna transform that attention into some kind of monetization
That's
on the
right.
back end.
It's very, very
That
powerful.
seems to be the new economy in being a personal brand is this model, I think.
That's so powerful. I don't know. Do you think that ties to Robert Cialdini's, his seminal book on influence? And one of the laws of influence is reciprocity. That when you give people something of value, they inevitably want to give you something back. So why do you think? Because you have a sales background. That's the interesting thing. You have a serious sales. You led a sales team. You led a sales team. They moved you to another company. You led it. So you have a sales background, but you don't put it in the front burner, and that I find that very, very fascinating. All right. So I want you to speak to how does reciprocity, how does it play to that? Because when I look at your content, you never really put a call to action and say, work with me, but you get a lot of leads. Can you talk to us about the power of reciprocity on this?
Yeah, I think reciprocity works in
And
a number
also
of different
balance
ways.
this.
Like,
I'll also balance that with the guy that says, you know what? I don't have any money. I don't have money.
right.
I've got to feed my family. Dane, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in sales there's a thing called sales breath. And sales breath is like if the person you're speaking to can sense desperation on you trying to get the sale, it makes you repulsive. Right? So
Mm.
it's like when you go to buy something and then they're like trying to get you to buy it right away. There's a tipping point where you're like, I'm interested, and then they push it really hard, and then you're like, I don't want to buy it anymore because I feel like this person's like, you know, it's all about them. And I
Yeah.
think when you make the sale all about you, people can sniff it out on you, man. You start to get the snake oil salesman energy, and you start to
Mm.
become repulsive. And I think like
Mm.
what happens with the law of reciprocity is like I won't give you the value until you pay me. That attitude, it just doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't really land with our generation the same way it might
Mm.
have landed with our forefathers and our mothers. I think reciprocity, like it's pretty straightforward. Give more value, give so much value that the person wants to pull out their credit card. And like I do this all the time. I don't just do it with my
Mm.
content. So
Mm.
I produce my content and I try to give it all away for free. I'm like, here's
Mhm.
the solution to all your problems. Pump it out every day or as consistently as possible, and don't ask for anything. But what happens is there's also this component with social media where if you spend, I think it's like 7 to 10 hours consuming someone's content,
Mhm.
your brain biologically does not know the difference between them being real in your life or digital. It doesn't know. Like your brain doesn't understand this concept of digital relationships.
Mm.
So when I listen to, let's just say, Joe Rogan for 10 hours,
Mhm.
a part of my brain's like, I know Joe. And if I meet him in public, this is why you see people storm celebrities that they've never met is because they feel like that's my friend. They know me. Your brain doesn't understand the barrier of like I've consumed them, but they don't know I exist. Right? So reciprocity is understanding, okay, you're building a digital relationship with someone virtually, and they fall in love with you for whatever reason. They like you, you're charming, you make them laugh, whatever that might be. That's still reciprocity because you're adding value by being their friend. So if you can create digital content like Alex Hormozy, where you're just giving away this beautiful content in video format and someone's consuming it and they have an affinity to like you, they then see you, let's just say after 30 hours of consuming their content, they feel naturally indebted to you. I get DMs all the time like, you've helped me so much. If I can ever repay you in any way, let me know. And I'm like, buy my shit.
Wow.
Please. Like, that'd be great. But yeah, in sales, when you're talking to someone face to face or you're on a phone call, I think what has always made me great at sales is I try to actually genuinely help the person. I channel my energy into them like they're my friend, right? So just imagine you're having coffee with your friend comes to you and they say, I'm frustrated. You just would help them. And what happens is if in that conversation, they're like, man, there's a lot of value here. This person's helping me. They don't seem to want anything from me. Then they might ask you like, how do we do this? How do we do this thing? You can still make sales by going out and saying, buy from me. I just don't think it's as potent as building a connection with someone and having them desire to give you money versus asking them to give you money. Yeah.
It's very powerful. I always like to ask people on the show, so what was the process like when you closed your first sale for Rival? What was the process like? How did you attract that client? And what was the process like before the client actually paid? This is important so that someone can hear this and learn some processes that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a process of what I call the power base. And the power base is basically write a list of everyone you know. So when you're starting and you're unknown, it's really important that you write a list of everyone I know. So I wrote down all the business owners I know, all the friends I know, all the friends of friends I know, and I wrote down what they do, ideas of how I might be able to help them. And this is a tough exercise. Like I've done this with literally thousands of people, and 99% of them really fucking struggle with this process. But an entrepreneur, if you're really an entrepreneur, you'll take this on as a challenge. So I would say, I think it's by the age of 21, the average person knows 2,000 to 3,000 people. You would have met and associates with, right? So I found a way to hack this. So like you can actually go on a Facebook Friends and you can export it as a CSV file and you can put that in an Excel spreadsheet. So if you're too lazy, like me, I was lazy. I was like, I don't want to sit down and write down.
Dain, you don't look lazy, man.
From my Facebook. I'm lazy. So I downloaded my Facebook list, and the first thing I did the night I got home from the Gary Vee event is I went to my list and I'm like, who runs a business? And I sent them calls. I called some of them. I texted some of them. I emailed some of them. I messaged some of them. And all I said basically was this. I said, could you do me a huge favor? And maybe 60 to 70% messaged me back and said, yeah, sure. What is it? And then I said back, look, I know this is a bit out of the blue. I've stumbled across something and I was thinking of you. And they're like, what is it? Like, I'm just driving them nuts with curiosity. And I say, can we get on a call? And they go, sure. I get on a call and I say, look, man, straight out of the gate, I'm going to ask you for something and you can say no. And they're like, sure, man. It sounds like it's pretty urgent. I'm like, it is. I started a business. I hate my job. I'm really great at design. I'm really great at sales. Is there anything I can help you with? And half of them were like, maybe. And then the other half were like, yeah, I need a logo. Yeah, I got this thing I'm trying to do. Yeah, I'm trying to build a website. So all I was doing was using my power base to see who does want to work with me. So who does want to reciprocate? Not everyone does, but I don't know who does and doesn't. So I had the balls and the courage to go and ask, to go door knocking, essentially. And to go cold calling on the market. And here's the law of reciprocity, and this is where the power base is interesting. If you go through that whole list and no one wants to help you, it's a sign that you're not a person that is reciprocal.
Mm.
So your power base will either reward you or hurt you for the type of person you've been up until that point. If you've been a great person, you've helped people, and you have a good reputation, man, that list is going to be like, yo, I'll help you out. And if you've been terrible and selfish and sales breathy your whole life, that list is going to say to you, I don't want to work with you. So the reason this exercise is important is because about half my students that do this come back to me and say, no one wants to work with me. And I'm like, awesome, that's great. And they're like, what do you mean that's great? And I would say, well, that's validation that you need to work on yourself and you need to be a better human being. And they're like, oh my God, right? So either your power base will hurt you or it'll help you. In my case, it helped me because I'd done a lot. So then what happened was that initial group of people became clients. $50 logos, $100 posters, $200 websites, like whatever I could get my hands on. As I was working with those clients, I was producing content about what I was doing and distributing it for free. Free tips on content, free tips on logos, free tips on color palettes. Just giving it away for free. After 6 weeks of doing this, I had a handful of people I knew pay me a little bit of money. Like not enough to really make it worthwhile. But I was proactively building my business. It wasn't profitable, but I was problem solving. I was learning what are their problems, what are their challenges. I was learning what doesn't work. I was learning how to present, how to pitch, how to get my idea across the line. So I didn't lose money, but I lost time. Like I spent more time than it was worth the money initially in the first 6 weeks. The interesting thing is what happened was by 6 weeks of producing content, people started saying, I want to work with you. Show me your work. And I would say, I've done all this work. So within that 6 weeks, I'd done work. And I'd said, here we go. But I was learning so much. I was upskilling myself so much that I went from $50 jobs to $500 jobs to $1,000 jobs. And then by week 6, I had one lead, and it was a guy named Mario. He reached out and he said, I love your content. I want you to work with me. Can we get on a call? Got on a call. He said, I want you to do my content for free. I said, you're nuts. I'm not making it for free. He said, here's the catch. If you do my content for free, I'll give you clients. And I was like,
I remember that story.
He goes, I'll call you back tomorrow. Calls me back the next day and he says, Dain, I've got you 6 clients. It's $10,000.
Booked in your calendar.
Booked my calendar and said,
booked your calendar. I know the guy.
Like, sure, yeah. So then I was faced with the dilemma of in order to fulfill these contracts that he'd given me, there were 6-month contracts for $10,000 a month, US dollars. That was more than my job paid me. So I quit my job. It was terrifying. And then I went through that stack of clients and I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. So like, I think when you're building a company, you're often learning what to do and what not to do, but you kind of have to go through what I call the trial by fire. So many people try to start a business in perfection. You have to get baptized by fire to succeed. Like you have to burn your hands a few times and learn, oh, that pissed that client off. I can't do that again. And I just was speeding up the process of the do's and don'ts. And I think so many people that want to be an entrepreneur, I call them wantrepreneurs, they don't want to deal with the ugly, not making any money stage of building a business, right? So that was the initial process. Once I got through my power base, and then I started relying on my content. So now my power base is growing. And it's not people I know, it's people I'm meeting. And they're reaching out in DMs saying, can you help me with X? Now, a lot of people don't know that 77% of DMs on social media are people asking for help. So if you look at how many people use social media and then you do the math, right? I think it's like 400 million people use Instagram or something. 77% of them use Instagram to ask for help, seek answers to problems they have. People are using social media as like this self-help system. And if you start to realize, I'm going to self-help people for free, guess what comes next? The DMs. Can you help me with X? You seem to be great at X. Can you help me with Y? Can you help me do X, Y, Z? That's when you start to monetize it. So I started changing what I sold over the lifetime of me growing my company on social media. But the process is simple. Whenever you can produce content, people say, can you help me? I say, sure. Here's a link. Book a call with me. Don't try to go straight to the sale. Get on a call with them. So then my process would be 5 steps. Number 1, what do you need? Oh, I need a logo. Why do you need the logo? My
Mm,
branding sucks. Why does your branding suck? I got no idea what I'm doing. Why do you have
mm,
no idea what you're doing? I don't have enough time for it. So you're just like, why? The needs analysis. Why do
mm,
you? They think they need the logo, but when you get down to it, they need someone to coach them. So then I
mm,
started to realize they don't just need a logo, they need to understand what branding is, they need a system, they need coaching, they need training, they need to understand sales. I would identify what they think they need and what they really need. Two different
mm,
conversations. People will reach out
mm,
saying, I think I need this. You're like, well, you actually need this. And then your job is to educate them on what you actually need. Um,
mm.
then, once you've got the needs out of the way, then you have to identify what are the challenges, what are the roadblocks. Why do this now?
Yeah.
Why haven't you done this before? Have you tried working
Hmm.
with someone before? Why didn't it work out? You identify all the
Hmm.
problems. So I know what they need, I know what their problems are, and I've got the whole kit. Then I start to present them with, look, based on what you need and based on your problems, this is
Yeah.
what I think. I think it should be this. Um,
Fantastic.
then you read it back to them. You're like, is there anything here that's missing? Right? So
Mm,
step one, needs analysis. Step two, problems analysis. Step three, present to them why you're great. Step four,
mm,
you start leading into like the feedback loop. So you loop back to
mm,
them. Okay, so you think you need this. You have this problem. I can do X, Y, Z. What's missing here? What would stop you going forward? So that's when you
mm.
need to identify like what how can I close this thing? And step five is just
Yeah.
close the deal. Um, yeah, so that's kind of my process pre and post success, if that helps.
It's very, 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 very powerful. Very, very powerful. Um, someone once said that really there are no new messages, there are only new messengers. Someone once said that there are no new messages, there are only new messengers. David Ogilvy, founder of Ogilvy and Mather, in his book, The Confessions of an Advertising Man, it says something similar to what you're saying. I mean, this book was written in the 1960s. He said that when he started his agency in New York, he wrote a list of the companies he wanted to work with. He had Shell, he had Bristol Myers, and he went out for those companies. And similar to what you are saying, this is very powerful. Then in Rival today, you have over 20 people working with you in your team. The last count was 22.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've added more people, to the team. So if you had to do it all over again, what role will you employ first and why?
That's a great question. I think luckily enough I kind of did it the right way. I think I would certainly looking back on things, I probably would have hired someone to do sales with me earlier. Um, but the smart thing I did was I seeked consultancy and I spoke to a guy named Michael Joyner and he had an agency for Fox Studios where he had 68 employees. And he
Mm,
said, Dane, write down all the possible jobs your organization would have. And I was like, okay, well, what should they be? I didn't even know. I'd never worked for an agency. He's like, well, usually you have the CEO, then you have a general manager or principal, then you have creative directors, then you have different departments. So you had a copywriting department, website development, marketing department. You might have advertising, you might have design, you might have, a set of people doing accounts. Um,
mm,
so I drew an organization chart that had 25 jobs on it. And this is before I had any employees. And then he said, which one
mm,
do you want to hire first? And I was like, well, the shit I hate the most is administrative work
mm,
and, finances. So then he's like, well, do you need to hire someone or could you contract a company? I was like, well, it might be cheaper to just contract a company. So then the first hire was technically someone to do bookkeeping as a service
mm,
from a separate entity. Um, and then I did HR in preparation of my first hire. And my first hire was someone to come in and do web development. So I would
mhm,
do all of the graphic design, all the copywriting. They would do all the development, which I didn't know how to do at all. That was
mhm.
my first hire. But I think the smartest thing I ever did was build my whole organization. And like legitimately what I have now is that organization. Except I realized I
Ah,
don't
this is
need
so
25
powerful.
people. Maybe maybe 20. So I have a copywriting department with a senior copywriter, a design department with an art director. I have a brand strategist that supports me. I have a project manager. I have a website development team, and I have a sales team and an
Mm,
administrative team. And they're all kind of managed by my GM. So I don't even really run the business anymore. It's kind of at the point now where my main responsibility is doing
Deal
strategy work
flow.
for the clients, which is the shit I like to do. Yeah.
This is so powerful. There was once in researching you, there was an analogy that you gave about the internet that I thought was very, very brilliant. You said that the internet is like walking into a library. That if you walk into a library, you don't just stare. You look at what you want to read about in the library. You go to that aisle. So if you want to do nutrition, you just walk straight to the nutrition aisle. That can you imagine someone you walk into a library and you see buy my stuff. You don't like that kind of library. All right. So people go to where their needs are. So I want to ask a question. Have you come to the conclusion whereby you just feel that okay, by you just giving such great ideas when people come to your aisle in the internet library, does that help your deal flow
Yeah,
for your
I think
business?
this is the beauty of this. It's such a simple method. I think we're always looking for the silver bullet. Like, what's the secret to unlock success that I don't know about yet? And this analogy is really powerful. Like, if you genuinely embody this, you go, okay, the internet is a library. The internet, by a few metrics, is free to access essentially. And
Yeah.
when you're in the public library, what are you looking for at that moment? You might want a story to entertain yourself. You might want to learn about a hard skill, like how to build a computer. You might want to go, I want to get better at sales. Like whatever it is, you're going to start gravitating to the section of the material that you
Yeah.
want to consume, and you want to
Hmm.
just pick something up and start reading it. You're not ready to buy anything yet. So
Yeah.
by principle, I think anyone that approaches the library and goes, wow, this library is great. I'm going to put a book in this section and you can't open it unless you swipe it with a credit card. That's basically what people are trying to do. Is they're like, I'm really valuable.
I like that metaphor. I love that metaphor.
Swipe your credit card on this book and then you get to read it. The thing is, like, if you approach the library like a promoter, you're gonna be repulsive. No one's gonna want to swipe their credit card on
Mm,
your book. But if you could just become a really good author, here's the thing: if your book was free and you were a great author, people will find a way to make and pay you money,
that's
um,
right.
to get you to write. They might read your book and go, "I wish they had more. I wish they had more books." And you go to the website, and you're like, "Wow,
Mm,
they got 7 more books. Now I'm willing to pay for it." So I think if you look at social media and go, "I'm genuinely not going to ask for anything. Here's my best material, and if your material sucks, good. At least it's out there in the world and you learn that it sucks." If you write a book and no one picks it off the library shelf, maybe it's the title, maybe it's the book, maybe you stink as an author. And it's not a bad thing. It's like just learn that early. And I think if you could create content that's actually good, it'll get traction. Like if you're
that's
actually
right.
good at producing content, it will get traction. People will share it, people will spread it, and then spreading the word around town that you exist is not a bad thing. There's money in that. And I think if you keep giving it away and keep spreading the word around town and keep getting people to talk about you and advocate for you, it's the law of reciprocation. If you love an author, you might buy the merch. You might go see the movie. You might download the
That's right.
digital version
That's
of
right.
that. And here's the thing is like people are like, well, I don't want to give away my best stuff for free. Then what am I going to sell them? And this is where you start to realize, well, now that I have their attention, that's the first step. Can I get the attention? And if you can get their attention and they like you and you're good, they're willing to transact with you. Now,
That's
here's the
right.
beauty. You take your content that got all the attention and you just put it into a formula. And you say, not only will I give you my content that you already know, I'll work with you and you can either do one of three things. Do it yourself. So I'll create an online course, which you can pay for, and I'll put all the content in order. So it's all workable. And you can sit down and do the course and then go and do it yourself, right? People will pay for you to put your content in a structure, in a formula, in an order. Two is they might want to do it with you. So they might go to your boot camp and go, I've been following you for years, Gary V. When Gary gets on stage, I mean, I still pay to go to his events. I don't learn anything I don't know. I'm just like, I'm excited to just go see him. Like, it's like
Mm,
seeing a concert from a band you love. Like, I know the songs. I could listen to it for free on Spotify, but I want to go experience it. So people will
mm,
pay
mm.
to be a participant with you. And this is especially if you're selling like, you know, educational services. But then if people ask themselves, but Dain, I sell products. It's the same thing. Entertain people with your products. Give them some kind of free value.
That's right.
And then have them desire to want to buy your product. So it still works. And I think if you look at brands like GoPro entertain you with all the cool shit that their product can do for free on their social media. And then you can go to the website and buy one for yourself now that you know what it's capable of doing. And then third is like, do it for me. So people will pay you to do it for them. So that's when they might pay you to do coaching. They might pay you to work on building their brand together with them. Some people want me to show them how they can build their own brand themselves. Some people want to collaborate with me and build branding with my team. Some people want to pay me to do it all for them. And there's 3 price tiers, and you increase the amount per level you want to sell your product at.
Yeah. This is such a fascinating conversation. Dain, I know that you are a guy that is very knowledgeable in the space. If there is one article, podcast, or book that really, really shapes your thinking about what you're doing right now, what would that article be, or what would that book be?
Yeah, there's an article by Kevin Kelly, and it's called 1,000 True Fans.
True Fans, yeah.
And he talks. Yeah, it's a famous article, and I think that shifted the paradigm for me. I remember reading that and going, oh, I don't have to get 10,000 followers. I just have to get 1,000 fans. Right? If I want to monetize my business, and I'm probably at the point now where I have 1,000 fans, I have 1,000 people that are willing to drive 6 hours to come see me speak. And it's taken me 4 years to get to that point. And I think like I'm only starting to realize that this has taken an effect now because I'm going to events where people have like flown cities or countries to come see me speak. I'm like, holy crap, a guy flew from London to the Gold Coast to hear me speak for 20 minutes. That guy's a true fan. You know what I mean? Like
that's
that
wild.
Guy is ride or die. Right?
That's wild, yeah.
So it's not until I did a bunch of back-to-back events where people were coming up to me and saying, Dain, I've been following you for years. I'm so excited. I traveled 2 or 3 hours to get here. I'm like, okay, I'm starting at this point. I've got 600,000 followers almost. Maybe I'm lucky if I've got 1,000 fans. So the game we're playing is fandom. How do I not get followers? How do I get fans? And how do I get fans? Well, I need to get them emotional. I need to get them to emotionally buy into what it is I'm doing. And unless they're completely like all in, convinced that there's something I can give them, then why would they drive 2 hours or why would they fly from London to hear me speak? So how do I become so valuable that people are willing to do that? That's the game you're playing. You're not playing this followers game. You're playing that I need to create fans. And how do you create fans? Be valuable, be entertaining, be something enigmatic that people want to get around. Yeah.
This is so good. I want to ask one more question and I'll let you go because I know you're a very busy man. What is one thing that was true for you in the past about branding, marketing, and sales that is no longer true for you today?
That's a great question. I think for me, I think what it means to differentiate, I think my original formula, I've ripped it to pieces. Because I used to believe that, I'm going to change my answer. I'm going to say it's strategy. I used to think that brand strategy was formulaic. I used to think that you have to do things in a certain order to get success. And you can, and I did, but it felt a little forced. What I've learned in the last year is sometimes you get the idea in 5 minutes. Sometimes you get the idea in 5 hours. And how you get the idea is not the same way. So when I'm workshopping, and I've done hundreds of these workshops that I've facilitated for clients, I'm at the level now where I can skate to the puck. You know that saying, like, don't skate to where the puck is, but skate to where the puck is going. So like, I have the ability now to walk into a workshop and have a set of tools that I can leverage and use for the workshop. But I don't need all the tools in every workshop. Sometimes I need 2 tools, sometimes I need 40. It really depends on the industry. It depends on the CEO. It depends on their team. It depends on their capabilities. How I facilitate each client drastically changes. And I think that I learned that the hard way. I used to think that you had to do everything for every client and it has to go through this ascending order. The challenge is the client has this own idea in their head as to what success means to them. And you might have an idea in your head as to what brand strategy is. What a great brand strategist has to be, and I've learned this the hard way, is, okay, the client's here. I actually think it's over here, but let me listen to them with two very open ears. And then what happens oftentimes is we start to like meld together in a unique way.
That's right.
So rather than me being rigid and rather than them being rigid, we have to both be
It's a hybrid.
malleable to. It's a hybrid. We have to both be malleable to work together. I need to make sure that they have the power of whatever I'm creating, because I can create something maybe better, but they're not capable of managing it. So this is where I'm always training creatives. I'm like, you have a great idea, great, but is the client capable of executing it? Maybe they're not comfortable. Maybe it's not their style. Maybe it's not how they want to do it. So you have to be great enough to go, okay, the client's probably over here and they're probably willing to move this far. I would like them to be over here, but I need to match them where they're at. So
That's right.
The model is, how do I go into my client's world and see the world from their perspective? Maybe they're not creative. Maybe they're not great at sales. Maybe they're not a great CEO. It doesn't matter. Can I help them be more successful where they're at? And can I pull them along a little bit? Can I have them step it up a little bit? Because I used to go, I'm over here, you got to get over here. And then the client would get frustrated because they're like, I don't work like that. And I'm like, okay, I need to be more flexible. So I've learned that you have to be very flexible, you have to be very adaptive, and you need to be willing to work with what the client's willing to give you. Because they might not be willing to give you everything. They might be willing to give you a small part of the puzzle. You need to be good enough to go, give me that small part, and I'll make your business work with that. And the only way I've learned that is through years of trial and error, years of experimenting. But I'm at a point now where every client we work with, we're nailing it because I'm being adaptive to them. I'm going into their world. I'm not trying to pull them into my world.
This is such a fascinating conversation. Like someone once said that for you to be understood, you need to understand them. Wow, this is so good. Thank you so much, Dain. This has been a fascinating conversation. You know, I mean, this is part of what you're talking about, fandom. I'm a fan of yours. I just want to have a conversation with someone that I admire. It just happens to be within the context of something called a podcast. So it's like I came to your office in Australia where we're having a conversation and the whole world is hearing that conversation with a fascinating human being that I met on the streets of the internet. So, Dain, I want to say thank you so much. So, where do people go for more? Of course, it's Instagram, and where else? Have you got like a newsletter? You've got like a course coming up? Because I mean, I paid for your first course. I don't know whether you have another one coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you can follow me on Instagram, just at Dain Walker. We have a YouTube channel where we have a lot of old content on, but we're about to bring a lot of new content to YouTube. We have a podcast called Tiger Table where we interview and unpack branding. We have a new boot camp coming out called Brand Dojo. It's not live yet, but it will be branddojo.com. And that's a 2-day boot camp where if anyone wants to build a personal brand and they can't afford me one-on-one, we've created a formula and a boot camp where within 2 days, I can train anyone on the planet in whatever industry to build a personal brand that they're capable of executing. And the last one is rival.com, rivyl.com. If you want to work with us and have us do it together with you, there's that option as well. Yeah.
Thank you. One more question. If there is a friend of yours that you say, Paul, I really enjoyed my conversation with you, I want to refer that person to you for you to interview. Who would that person be? That's my last question I always ask.
What are you interested in?
Fantastic question. So I'm interested in marketing, sales, personal branding.
Yeah, I would say a gentleman I know by the name of Nathan James. He runs a very successful gym franchise. And he's asked me to get him on more podcasts. So email me, I'll introduce you to him. And but yeah, he owns a gym franchise called Fitness Cartel, and he's really interesting to talk to and knows a lot about the gym space.
Brilliant.
But it has a
Brilliant.
background in marketing and branding and sales. Yeah.
Great. I'll send that email to you today just to remind you. Thank you so much for coming. Have a fantastic day, and I wish you all the best in Rival.
Thank you, man.
God
Thanks
bless
for
you.
having me, bro. See ya.
Yeah.
God bless.
Thank you. Yeah.